5 legends. 5 times, the system said no. Too small. Too fragile. Not built for this. It wasn't an insult. It was a report. In sports, talent isn't always discovered. Sometimes it's discarded. Lionel Messi, Jim Abbott, Jose Altuve, Dustin Pedroia, Pedro Martínez. 5 times, the system judged the body and underestimated the legend inside. Lionel Messi had already been told no, more than once. Not because of his talent, but because of his body. In Argentina, Messi played for Newell's Old Boys. He was one of the best players in his age group. But there was a problem no one wanted to take on. The hormonal treatment he needed was expensive, and no club was willing to cover that cost without guarantees. In the year 2000, his father, Jorge Messi, was looking for a concrete solution. Not a sporting promise, a medical answer. Through intermediaries, FC Barcelona received reports about a 13-year-old Argentine boy. Small, but with obvious talent. The club agreed to see him train in Barcelona. Messi traveled with his father, not to sign, but to be evaluated. He trained with players his age. He played only a few minutes. It was enough for the club's sporting director, Karl Rexach, to make a decision. The problem wasn't football, it was time. The family needed an immediate answer, and the club didn't yet have a contract prepared. In December 2000, Karl Rexach wrote an informal commitment on a paper napkin. In that improvised document, FC Barcelona committed to signing Lionel Messi and covering the cost of his hormonal treatment. It wasn't an official contract, it was a guarantee. Barcelona didn't say it was a safe bet. They said they were willing to take the risk. That was the yes, not to who Messi was at that moment, but to the possibility that time would do its part. Jim Abbott was born without a right hand. From the very beginning, that placed him outside any known category in baseball. No one with one hand had ever reached that level of the sport. Abbott started playing baseball as a child in Michigan. He wasn't pushed forward by an institution. He was supported by his family and by local coaches who accepted something basic, letting him play. From an early age, he had to develop his own technique. He pitched with his left arm. After releasing the ball, he quickly placed his glove over his residual limb to be able to field. It wasn't an aesthetic adaptation, it was a functional necessity. As he progressed, the problem wasn't his performance, it was the risk. Coaches, recruiters, and executives kept asking the same question. What happens if the ball comes back at him? What happens if there's a line drive straight to the mound? There were no precedents. There were no comparisons. Still, Abbott kept advancing. First in high school, then at the University of Michigan. Michigan chose to recruit him not because he fit the prototype, but because his performance justified it. There, he became one of the best pitchers in college baseball and won the Golden Spikes Award in 1987, given to the best amateur player in the United States. Even with those results, the doubts didn't disappear. When the time came for the MLB draft, the discussion wasn't about his control or his velocity. It was about his body and the risk of letting him take the mound. In 1988, the California Angels decided to select him, accepting a reality never seen before in professional baseball. Not because the system was ready for someone like him, but because, for the first time, a team accepted something simple. They would never know if it was possible unless they let him try. That was his yes. Jose Altuve heard the same answer again and again. He was too short. In Venezuela, his height, more than his performance, was what worried scouts. When he was 16 years old, Altuve attended a Houston Astros tryout camp in Maracay. At first, the coaches decided not to let him participate because of his size. The next day, with the support of his father, he returned to the same camp and presented his birth certificate. That allowed the scouts to evaluate him. Alfredo Alpedric, then a special assistant with the Astros, watched him closely. Pedric wasn't looking for a player who fit a physical prototype. What he saw was consistent hitting, speed, and a baseball intelligence that didn't show up in height measurements. Pedric took his recommendation to the front office, and on March 6, 2007, the Astros decided to sign Altuve as an international free agent for a bonus of just $15,000. Very low, even for that time. When the offer was presented, Altuve's father was not satisfied with the amount. But Jose, with humility and determination, answered the Astros simply, "It doesn't matter how much. I just want the opportunity to play." That answer, "I want to play," was the key. Altuve entered the Astros minor league system, not because he fit a physical standard, but because someone decided to give him a real opportunity to compete. That was his yes. Dustin Pedroia started playing baseball as a child with the constant support of his family. He was never discouraged from competing, but he was never projected as a future star. From early on, the issue wasn't his technique, or his discipline, or his understanding of the game. It was his body. For many coaches and evaluators, Pedroia didn't have the kind of physique that promised long-term dominance. He didn't project power. He didn't impose presence. The doubts weren't about whether he could play. They were about how far someone like him could go. In high school, his performance was strong, but the evaluations kept repeating themselves. Good player, solid fundamentals, clear physical limitations. Pedroia entered Arizona State University, not as a headline recruit, as a reliable player. There, his performance was consistent. He played every day. He executed the basics with precision. He made very few mistakes. He didn't stand out because of his body. He stood out because of his consistency. Over time, his results became impossible to ignore. In 2004, after winning the Golden Spikes Award as the best amateur player in the country, the Boston Red Sox selected him in the draft. Second round, 65th overall. It wasn't a selection based on physical projection. It was a response to accumulated evidence. Pedroia moved through the system without privileges and without special protection. He wasn't fast-tracked. He wasn't labeled a centerpiece. He simply wasn't removed. Year after year, coaches kept him on the roster because they couldn't find a baseball reason to take him out. That continuity was his opportunity, not because someone saw a future star, but because sustained performance eventually overcame doubt. That was his yes. Pedro Martínez showed talent from a young age. That was never in doubt. The problem was his body. He was thin, light, far from the physical build Major League Baseball associated with durability. In the Dominican Republic, the pitchers who drew attention were big, strong, intimidating. Pedro didn't fit that profile. The difference was he wasn't alone. His older brother, Ramon Martínez, did have the body the system was looking for, and at that time, he was considered the real prospect. When major league organizations traveled to watch Ramon, Pedro appeared as a secondary figure, the younger brother, the companion. He wasn't the priority, he wasn't the target, but he kept insisting on pitching. Pedro Martínez's opportunity didn't come from a direct search. It came, largely, from the insistence of his brother Ramon. Pedro was there because someone had pushed the door open for him. And when he got the opportunity, he delivered a level of performance that couldn't be ignored. Not because of his body, but because of his arm. In 1988, Pedro Martínez was signed by the Los Angeles Dodgers at just 16 years old. Not as a primary investment, not as a star project, but as a secondary possibility within the system. That was his yes. Once inside, Lionel Messi stopped being a question very quickly. He didn't need time to adapt to the ball, or to the space, or to the rhythm. What changed wasn't his body. It was his impact. He debuted with FC Barcelona's first team while still a teenager. And from the very beginning, he was already doing things that could not be taught. He received the ball between the lines. He made decisions before everyone else. He solved situations naturally in scenarios that demanded personality. It wasn't a single flash. It was repetition. As the seasons passed, Messi stopped being a promise. He became the axis. Before his arrival, FC Barcelona had won only one Champions League in its entire history. With Messi as the central figure, the club won 4. He won 10 Spanish League titles, 7 Copa del Rey trophies, 3 Club World Cups. And on an individual level, he earned 8 Ballon d'Or awards, a number that separated him from any direct comparison. Between 2006 and 2015, Barcelona didn't just collect titles. It became a global reference, an identity of play that revolved around its number 10. Tight matches opened with a single action from him. Entire defenses reorganized just to try to contain him. Finals were decided by his presence. He didn't impose himself physically. He imposed himself through game intelligence, precision, and consistent results. But there was still one chapter unfinished. With the Argentine national team, his talent was never in doubt. The weight was something else. For years, Messi carried the expectations of an entire country and the burden of lost finals that seemed to define his story. Until time played in his favor. He won the Copa America, then another one. And in 2022, he led Argentina to win the World Cup. Not as a promise, not as a project, as an absolute leader. At that moment, the debate ended. That small boy, the one someone once chose to wait for, ended up changing the history of a club, marking an entire country, and becoming a global icon. He didn't just redefine an era, he closed his legacy on the biggest stage in sports. Once Jim Abbott reached professional baseball, the doubt didn't disappear, but it stopped mattering. From his debut in Major League Baseball, Abbott proved that the problem had never been what he lacked, but what he knew how to do. In 1989, in his first full season with the California Angels, he won 12 games. Not as a curiosity, not as an inspirational story, as a starting pitcher. As the years passed, Abbott established himself in a rotation that made no concessions. He faced the best hitters in the world, hitters who knew exactly what to look for, and still, they failed. His mechanics were not an exception. They were a functional solution, repeatable and effective. In 1991, he threw a no-hitter with the New York Yankees. That same year, he was selected to the All-Star game, not as a symbolic recognition, as confirmation. After that, the conversation was no longer about whether it was possible. It was about what he had already done. Abbott finished his major league career with more than 80 wins and a sustained presence at the highest level of the sport. He was never treated as a miracle. He was never protected. He was evaluated by the same standards as everyone else, and he responded with results. Jim Abbott didn't change baseball because the system adapted. He changed it by proving, on the field, that there was a different way to execute the game at the highest level. That was the answer. Once Jose Altuve was given a real opportunity, he didn't need shortcuts. He moved forward the way those who cannot be ignored do, by producing every day. He rose through the minor league system without privileges and without special labels. When he reached Major League Baseball, he didn't arrive as a physical projection. He arrived as a complete player. As the seasons passed, Altuve became one of the most consistent hitters in baseball. He led the league in hits, in batting average, in offensive presence. He won Silver Slugger awards. He was selected to multiple All-Star games. In 2017, he reached the point that separates the very good from the historic. He won the American League Most Valuable Player award. That same year, he was a central piece of a World Series championship. Not as a compliment, as a protagonist. Unlike other cases, his body never changed. What changed was the conversation. Altuve stopped being the small player. He became one of the offensive references of his generation. Today, with thousands of hits accumulated and a career still active, his name already appears in any serious discussion about the Hall of Fame. Not as a symbol, as a statistical result. Jose Altuve didn't redefine baseball through projection. He did it through consistency. And as his career continues, one number still defines the horizon: 3,000 hits. Not as a promise, as a real possibility. When Dustin Pedroia reached Major League Baseball, no one expected a transformation. What happened was a confirmation. From his first seasons with the Boston Red Sox, Pedroia didn't stand out by imposing himself. He stood out by not making mistakes. He played every day, executed every fundamental with precision, turned the difficult into routine. He wasn't the strongest player, or the biggest, or the most intimidating, but he was always where he needed to be. In 2007, in his first full season, he won the Rookie of the Year award, not as a fleeting surprise, as a signal of consistency. 1 year later, in 2008, he reached a level that left no room for doubt. He was named American League Most Valuable Player. He won the Gold Glove, the Silver Slugger. That same year, he was a central piece of the Boston Red Sox World Series championship. Throughout his career, he was selected to 4 All-Star games and won 2 World Series rings, 2007 and 2013. Not as a secondary figure, as part of the team's competitive core. His impact didn't depend on a spectacular play. It depended on being constantly at the center of the game. Over time, injuries shortened his career, but they didn't change his place in history. Pedroia wasn't remembered for what he could have been. He was remembered for what he was when he was on the field. A player who didn't fit the mold, who never dominated physically, and who, even so, reached the top of professional baseball. When Pedro Martínez reached professional baseball, he didn't arrive as a primary bet. The talent was there, but the body raised doubts. Thin, light. Far from the dominant prototype Major League Baseball expected from a pitcher. The Los Angeles Dodgers signed him in 1988, when he was just 16 years old. Not because they saw him as a future star, but largely due to the insistence of his older brother, Ramon Martínez. Ramon fit the mold. He had the body, he had the profile, and at the time, he was considered the real prospect. Pedro entered the system as a secondary possibility. He wasn't developed as a priority, he wasn't protected, he wasn't projected. In 1993, the Dodgers decided to move on from him. Pedro Martínez was traded to the Montreal Expos in exchange for Delino de Shields, a trade that, at the time, went almost unnoticed. It was in Montreal where Pedro Martínez proved he could not be ignored. There, he won his first Cy Young Award. There, he established himself as a dominant starter. There, he made it clear that his body did not limit his performance. But it was in Boston where his story reached another dimension. In 1998, Pedro Martínez joined the Boston Red Sox on the most demanding stage in baseball during the heart of the offensive era, when hitters were breaking records and pitchers were suffering. Pedro did the opposite. He reduced runs. He controlled games. He imposed respect. He won 2 more Cy Young Awards. He was selected to 8 All-Star games. In 1999 and 2000, he posted seasons that are still considered today among the greatest ever recorded by a pitcher. Not because of volume, because of absolute efficiency. In 2004, he was a key piece of the Boston Red Sox World Series championship. Not as a compliment, as a dominant starter in the decisive moments. That title didn't just end a historic drought for the franchise, it ended the debate. Pedro Martínez stopped being the small pitcher no one prioritized. He became the standard. He didn't redefine baseball through physical dominance. He did it through control, intelligence, and an execution no one could replicate. They were told no for reasons that sounded logical. Too small, too fragile, not built for this. The system didn't change its rules, and they didn't change their path. Messi, Abbott, Altuve, Pedroia, Pedro Martínez, different sports, different stories, the same initial answer. This is not a story about scouting mistakes. It's a story about consistency, about continuing when no one expects anything, about insisting when the answer has already been given, about families who pushed doors when the world asked for patience or silence. None of them fit the mold, but they all did the same thing. They believed in what they could do when no one else did. The system gave them nothing. They stayed long enough for performance to speak, and when it did, there was no turning back. And if you believe that sports are decided only on the field, in the next episode, we won't talk about statistics or results. We'll talk about the commercial battle behind one of the biggest sporting events in the world, about how brands invest fortunes for just a few seconds of attention, about the real value of an advertising spot when hundreds of millions of people are watching at the same time, and about the silent war to dominate the most watched stage on the planet, the Super Bowl halftime show. Because on that day, the game is only part of the spectacle. The rest is decided in boardrooms, contracts, and numbers that change entire industries.